What's up? Welcome to Culture Binge, the Wisecrack podcast, where we break down everything happening in the cultural zeitgeist. I'm Michael, and I'm here with Alec. Hey, Alec, how are you?
Hey, I'm great.
And here with Serby, who has an electronic chair. Serby, how are you doing today?
Hi, I'm well, thanks. How are you?
I'm so good. Jealous of the chair. For those who aren't watching or weren't here earlier in the studio, we learned that Serby has a chair that magically rises and falls as she wills. So lots to talk about this time.
It's
my
my desk.
Oh.
Serby, can you do a demo?
Yes.
Yeah,
I'm
for
very
anyone
proud
watching.
of this desk.
Okay. It's like the Austin Powers bit.
You should just do that when you're bored. Anyway.
Anyway, quite a bit to talk about this week. So, without any further ado, does anyone have any slaps and traps from the last 2 weeks?
I do.
How about you get us started then?
Yeah. What slaps is Jared's back, and that rules.
Hell yes.
And doing his job is, I don't envy it. I'll just leave it at that. And then for what chaps, I'm one episode behind, but I think it's safe to say that I will continue to watch it, but Star Trek Picard is bad, and I hate it. And I will watch every single episode from now until the end of time.
But really quick, is the Picard thing, isn't he like he runs a vineyard and is making wines, or am I getting this wrong?
Yeah, he always, there was reference to that in the original, in The Next Generation, that he had a vineyard.
Okay, to me that sounds like a pleasant show, but I haven't watched it yet. So, anything else that's currently chapping you're behind?
I think that's it. I think everything is great and wonderful, and there's nothing to complain about ever.
That's the state of the world view through my eyes. Serby, what's slapping and chapping?
So what slaps is that Pet Shop Boys and New Order are going on tour. I'm very excited, so I'm going to buy tickets for that. What chaps is that I can't seem to find really warm winter clothes. I'm traveling abroad next month, and it's going to be super cold. And ever since I had that horrible reaction to the Hep A vaccine, I get hives whenever I'm really cold.
Oh, no.
So I've been buying different jackets and things, and nothing seems to be warm enough for me.
I really just recommend layering. Not that you asked for recommendations. But
No,
layering.
I want recommendations. That's what I forgot. So if anybody has recommendations, please let me know.
And if anyone in the chat has recommendations, please throw them our way.
But like, what material for for the layers?
I've spent way too much time thinking about layering because I'm going on a long hiking trip. But what hikers do is they'll have like a puffy, which is usually like a down jacket, but like a thinner one, like not a very heavy one. And then you have a base layer, which you could do a lighter layer or like a mid-weight layer. So think about like a long sleeve, usually like athletic material, although you're not going to be sweating, or maybe you will, so that won't be bad. And then kind of like a hoodie over that, and then you put your puffy. And I've been just doing that all winter in New York. And so when it gets under 30 degrees, it's not that sustainable, and I have to pull out my big wool coat, but it's kept me pretty warm.
So for the down jacket, what fill do you recommend? Because I bought a 550 and I was really cold at like 60 degrees.
I think you just got to layer stuff under it. I don't know the specific fills because I have like a synthetic thing that is like anyway.
Well, that's good. And I'm glad that this is now turned into an athletic wear podcast. That's what we've always wanted it to be. So awesome. Someone did ask in the chat if there's something on the BoJack finale coming, and I just want to say yes, just so they know.
Yeah. There's a Thomas Ambrosini, one of our writers, is pitching me a thing that we haven't quite figured out, but hopefully when I read it more thoroughly, it's the best idea I've ever heard, and it will be on the channel in a month or so.
Yeah, or hypothetically a Good, Bad, and Brilliant that's completely about the finale of BoJack.
Oh yeah, that too. I forgot.
It was already filmed? Yeah, wow. I feel pretty overlooked. So what chaps for me is Alec overlooking the work that I do to talk about things that haven't been created yet, which will be good, I'm sure. I'll do mine real quick. What slaps in my world? The TV show High Maintenance came back on HBO since we were last here. I think I can confidently say overall it's my favorite show. I've never lived in New York, but I feel like it gives me this like interesting view into Alec's world. So that's great. And the other thing I'll say, I'm going to be greedy and do two. Portrait of a Lady on Fire, French film, was out in limited release, is now out in wide release. Saw it the other night. Truly phenomenal movie. Anyone who lives near a theater that's playing it should go see it. It's just fantastic. What chaps? Two quick things. Grocery stores. Went to one the other day, and Albertsons had a really hard time finding anything that I wanted. Couldn't come up with a meal that I wanted to create, and just thought to myself, how are there thousands of things and nothing that I want? Found that frustrating. And the other thing is, I think my best friend might be moving to Europe chasing a woman. Oh, not chasing like he's going to do anything bad, like a love chase. But I don't like that because you want your friends around you. You don't want them in Europe finding love. So I wish that all my friends remain unhappy and near me. I feel like I left it on a bummer note, so I apologize.
Thanks a lot, Michael.
I
Really
know.
hitting a nerve with me right now.
Oh no! Shoot, I didn't mean to do that. Everything's great. Love is real. And everyone who's good will find it, and everyone on this podcast is good. So let's get into our topics for this week. We have a lot to get to, including a special guest later in the episode. I don't want to spoil it, but please stick around. Or should we spoil it?
We'll spoil it.
Okay, awesome.
It's Jamie Loftus is a comedian. She's a writer. She joined Mensa for a year and made a podcast about it. And I thought it was really funny. So I was like, we got to interview this person. So we did. We pre-recorded it, but we'll play it for you all.
And it's awesome and it's great. So stick around for that. I'm going to start things off, if it's okay with you all this week, talking about something that I find myself thinking about a lot, which is influencer culture, but in particular, the influencer culture that has been created by the TV show The Bachelor. Well, let me ask this at the outset. Alec or Serby, have either of you ever watched any of the properties associated with the Bachelor Extended Universe?
Maybe 10 years. When did the show first air?
Oh, God. I think it's been on for almost 20 years.
I think I might have seen parts of the first season as like a teenager.
Yeah. Is that where you learned about love?
Yes. That's
everything
I know I learned as a 12-year-old now.
Well, I'm just going to admit this, and everyone can roast me in the live chat if you want. I deserve it. I've been regularly watching The Bachelor and their other shows like Bachelor in Paradise and The Bachelorette for, I'd say, about the last 5 or 6 years. And there's this cultural change that's happened in the show that I do think is parallel to a lot of things happening in our culture in general. Now, when the show first started out, it was kind of a show where maybe overly idealistic people who wanted attention would go on TV attempting to find love. And in the early seasons, you can kind of categorize the contestants into one of those groups. Either they stupidly think that going on TV is a good place to find love, or they just want to be on TV to hit some sort of narcissistic pleasure center in their brain. And it was all well and good. Early on, a few of the couples would get married. A few of the early ones actually stayed together, had kids, all that sort of stuff. What's happened in recent years, however, is rather than becoming a place to go get attention or find an idealistic form of love, it's become a sort of minor league system for online influence marketers. So you go on this show these days with no real intention of finding love, of getting into a real relationship. You go to get enough attention, to get a big enough follower count, to then make deals with all of the brands that make exclusive deals with people that have been on these shows. Now, for a few seasons, this was kind of happening in the shadows. Like, we knew it was taking place and no one would acknowledge it. Now, however, contestants will sort of try to sabotage each other. In the most recent season, a young woman who was on the show named McKenna got thrown under the bus because she was already workshopping the hashtags she was going to use on her social media when she got off to get deals. And it's not a thing as well where people are making a little bit of money off of this. There's a couple that got married from the show called Tanner and Jade who have made, and I'm not exaggerating, millions of dollars off sponsored Instagram posts. They are legitimate millionaires because of this. And it's not all social media influencing. Others have gone on to start podcasts where they talk about the show that they were on that have really high-paying sponsors. Some of them do these events around the country now, where they'll go to like a convention center, people that are on the show will speak, and then they'll sell like branded jewelry and things like this. So it's hit a new level of cynicism in this. So what I wonder as well, and how I think this, I guess, touches on our culture as a whole, is it makes me think about how many spaces in society are just places for wannabe grifters to get enough attention to leverage their followings and sponsored content or their own media brands. Because this doesn't just happen on The Bachelor. It happens with like resistance Twitter and people that like get involved in causes. Like there's all of these ways now that people can grift. And of course we all know about like Fire Festival and Theranos and all these large scale grifts. But because you all are not members of Bachelor Nation, which is what we call ourselves who watch the show, so that's a real thing. I mean, am I overreacting, or are we just seeing a large-scale cultural shift towards grifting being the new career path for attention-hungry millennials?
I think grifting is pretty old, but it's definitely different.
But it's a new type of grifting, right?
It's like a new and exciting form of grifting. Speaking of grifting, I walked by and saw Salt Bay opened a restaurant, and the restaurant is, I swear to God, it's just called #Salt Bay. Not Salt Bay. They put the little pound sign in there. The food looked really good though. But sorry, Serby.
I really relate to these people because the only reason why I'm on this podcast is because I want to be an influencer and a grifter. I have no Instagram. I barely have a Twitter. So I don't know how this is going to work out for me, but we'll see.
And let me just interject too to say thanks to Dude Abides. Threw some coin our way and said he loved the episode Alec and I did about righteous gemstones on Good, Bad, and Brilliant. So thank you so much, Dude Abides.
Thank
That's
you.
So sweet.
Yeah. Well, here's a question. So in my mind, the people who used to be on reality TV shows, like the people who they would recruit people who seemed to be the most mentally unstable that would make good TV. And the people, there's like a selection bias. The people who are most mentally unstable are the person who says, I want to be filmed 24 hours a day while I'm having sex with random people.
Yeah.
And not just about the Bachelor, but
sex.
any Joe Millionaire, whatever reality
Yeah.
TV show, there's something there. But now is it more mentally stable, competent? Because here's my thing about grifters. They're usually super smart. And I'm not calling these people dumb. I think they know exactly what they're doing and have just made a choice and are sticking with it. And so is there more self-awareness? Are there sort of smarter, more stable, more competent people on the shows now?
Well, yeah. So that you can really break down the people that come on the show into maybe like 3 categories that are split amongst thirds. You do have the traditional crazies, people that show up, especially on The Bachelor, like first night in a weird outfit, get shit-faced and make a mess of themselves. Then in the middle, you have this category of people that present as relatively normal, but are not. They're clearly in for the grift, or they're already planning their next move. These are the people that like stuff comes out on social media when the show airs, showing their previous sketchy behavior. And the final third, you have the geniuses. The geniuses are the ones that completely present as earnest, honest people that are here, and this is the code word we use in this community, that are here for the right reasons. That's always the question that gets asked. People will say, I don't think she's here for the right reasons. But the people who are, quote unquote, here for the right reasons, who go further in the competition, because of course the crazies get let off weeks 1 to 3. The kind of mid-level earnest, but we can see through it, people get let off, let's like weeks 4 through 7. The people that stick around the longest end up having the biggest grifts, because they then come across as someone who like was here for the right reasons, and I found love and it didn't work out, but I'm excited to tell you about this new tea that makes me poop out all my weight, or something like that now. So it's almost the people who seem the less obvious in their grift who are clearly the ones making the most off of this. And it's sort of the mindset is the longer you stay in the game, the more money you're going to make at the end, which means in some cases people, this is kind of dark, might be having sexual intercourse with someone they don't even care about that much, because you got to get to fantasy suite week to stick around the longest to get to the end of this.
Shit, maybe I should try out for The Bachelor.
Hey, it could be fun. You get to stay in a nice mansion at first, and they do some good trips. They went to Cleveland this season in winter. So, but then they immediately went to like South America and stuff in Buenos Aires.
This kind of reminds me of the corporate world. Like, I always get off like weeks 1 through 3 because I feel like I'm the one who's always like, this culture is whack. Like, what is going on? Like, this is so weird. I'm the one who's always making noise. But the people who know how to play the game, they're the ones that like climb the ladder, and they're the ones that get the promotions and things. So I feel like there's a lot of parallels between these like influencer grifters and people who do really well in the workplace, from my experience. And I mean, good for them if they figure this out and they can make money by being an influencer. That's good.
Yeah.
I think there's also another interesting expansion in any reality show, not just the competition shows. I feel like the personalities are turning into influencers, and maybe the slightly different, have their own products that they peddle as influencers. And so some friends of mine really like that show about the Duggar family, and there's like a million of them, and they all have like podcasts.
Oh, yeah.
And they have sponsorships and are selling stuff, or the Little People Big World family. I remember there was one son in particular who stopped being on the TV show, and in this long Instagram tirade talked about how everything was fake and quoted Noam Chomsky, which is awesome.
Whoa. Is that content made specifically for you?
I think so. Or even I've been following hikers on, like, even hikers who are doing the Pacific Crest Trail, like that Wild movie, whatever, are now doing podcasts where they're talking about their favorite products. And I think some of it's in earnest, like, oh, here's the backpack that I used and you should use it too. But I also think some of it is give me that cash money from this $300 sleeping bag.
Yeah. But in cases
I feel
like
like-
that,
yeah,
it's
go
not
ahead.
like gross. Like a hiker promoting a backpack, whatever. Like, you're probably not making millions off that. The backpack you're promoting is probably fine. Whatever. I get worried about some of the more odious stuff where, there was a whole thing that happened, and there was an article about this, I think, in the New York Times, about some of the resistance grifters, like people that started these Twitter accounts after the 2016 election, who many of them turned out to be not who they said they were, who had conflicting political beliefs to that which they said. Some were outright like really bad people who created big social media followings that they cashed in on. And so that really worries me. I do wonder if either of y'all have thoughts on this. Like, how does the bottom fall out on this? What is the market collapse scenario of the influencer economy? Because it's bound to happen.
I think there was a little bit of it, but I don't think, like, I think a bubble burst a few years ago in that influencers were kind of new and buzzy, and I was working at some jobs where like marketing was involved, and the people were just throwing money at influencers saying, hawk my product, post about me on Instagram, but a lot of it doesn't actually work.
Yeah.
Sometimes, like when Kim Kardashian decides to sell something, she's pushing, like, it's probably well worth the investment. But a lot of people are just grifting their way to, free hotel stays and free drinks and free products and stuff like that. And so I think not all the money dried up, but I think people started to be much more cautious. So in a way, I think it has. But then again, I think there's sort of like the creme de la creme of, like, I was on The Bachelor. Those are the people still cashing in on it. But yeah, I don't know. I don't think the bottom will fall out on that. I think it will just slowly overtake our lives where every single person has some side hustle of selling things on Instagram.
And that's what really worries me. Serby, thoughts on this?
I agree. I don't think that I see this ever going away. I do think that consumers will be savvier, though, and maybe it'll be like a fatigue, like influencer fatigue, where people will just be like, oh, okay, she's just talking about this makeup brand because she has a sponsorship. So maybe that's what will happen. People will just get tired of it. But I don't see brands not doing it, especially if they're able to find somebody who has like 1 million followers or something. They will still pump money into that.
Yeah.
I have a really inspiring story. I hope I didn't mention this before, but Without Fail is an interview show. They interviewed the first like makeup influencer who essentially left. She created a YouTube channel with makeup tutorials, got very, very famous and very, very rich, and quit because she said that she doesn't like going to these parties with cool people. She'd rather stay home with her cat. And I really respect that person.
That's nice. There's a good Thundercat song, if anyone listens to Thundercat, about how he just wants to hang out with his cat. And he put out a new song recently that references having cat hair on his cool clothes. You should listen to it out. We'll wrap this up with sort of, I have a question for you all, but first a statement from myself. Why I do hope that the bottom falls out a little bit, because my hope for The Bachelor, to get back to The Bachelor, is that eventually the bottom falls out on this Bachelor economy. People realize it's no longer a viable career, and they get back on the show for the right reasons. They go on the show because they want to find love, and in our alienated and fractured society, the best chance they have is to live in a house with a bunch of strangers, have 2 drinks an hour, because that's the maximum amount of drinks you're allowed to have in an hour on that show, and meet a great pilot from outside Los Angeles, or a dental hygienist from Milwaukee, or a mortuary worker from the San Fernando Valley. That's what I want to see.
Wait,
and I hope we get
I,
back there.
I have last question. Do we think, you know how people's jobs will become obsolete at some point and they're like,
Yes.
what do we do with all of these truck drivers now that robots have taken that hasn't happened
Mm-hmm.
yet, but coal miners, industry, it always happens. Even football player, like the problem with football players is they join the NFL, they make a lot of money for a very specific amount of time, and they have no money, and it's like really rough for them, and a lot of them have traumatic brain injuries. Do we think that's going to happen with the class of influencers, is that there will be a host of people with no job skills, and when that all kind of evaporates, or when they get too old to be cool and selling things, there's just going to be thousands and thousands of people who are unemployable that we have to figure out what to do with as a society?
I actively think about this because some of these people in the Bachelor universe, they like leave jobs. There's people who have left jobs as lawyers and become influencers, who some of whom were doing like legit law, public defense work, and they leave those careers. Imagine how much time and money goes into becoming a lawyer, and you leave that career to like huck lipstick or shoes. I find that insane. And I think you're right. I think there is going to be a big class of people with no marketable skills because of this, and it really worries me. Now to wrap up with this, I do have a question, and we'll start with Serby. If you were an influencer, what do you think your brand would be? What sort of stuff are you hucking? What products are we seeing on your feed?
It would be things that I use, or like things that I would want, like things that I think are great, like travel stuff, like, oh, this suitcase, or like this airline is really nice. It wouldn't be like, I don't wear a lot of makeup, so it wouldn't be anything like that, unless it was like makeup that I used. So I would try to be as authentic as possible with that.
So like the modern millennial on the go.
Yeah.
Your travel-based lifestyle will be here to influence us all and help us plan our next hashtag getaway.
Yeah. So if you have a hashtag for me, let me know.
Okay, great. So make a hashtag for Serby. If anyone has in the chat, that'd be great. Alec, what is your post Bachelor brand going to be?
Books. I'm sure that's not a viable strategy, but if people would pay me to recommend books, that would be really cool.
I already
I
see
feel
the
in a way
post,
that's what
yeah.
I do is I just say, I read this cool book and I wrote about it.
Yeah, I see an image right now of you like on a couch, kind of like covered in books, is like a bit like someone covered in sand on the beach with like your cat kind of on the thing next to you, and then that's your. I think that's really good. Well,
you.
I like that. So come up with some
what about
hashtags.
you? What are you hawking?
Oh man, probably just fast casual cuisine of various sorts. Never anything too nice, but for example, like I found out that Chipotle has a new queso blanco they're releasing. So I'm probably doing posts where I'm like going around town with queso blanco, mixing it with different things, introducing people to their new queso blanco, and other chains like that. The highest end I could see myself going is maybe like a sweet green, but any place where we're in the 20s with tax, it's not a part of my brain. We're between $8 and $19. I got you.
I thought that it would be that wicking clothing.
Oh, never mind. You're totally right. Sweat Life. My
Yeah,
entire brand would be products and goods to help the modern sweaty man survive in the urban environment. Thank you so much for correcting me, Serby.
You're welcome.
Screw fast casual food. Well, thanks for letting me indulge my Bachelor conversation. Thanks for everyone who's listening who let me do that. I know it's a little bit off brand. Serby, what do you have for us today?
So I was talking to a friend of mine at work, and she was telling me that she knows of somebody who's donating her kidney. And I unfortunately don't know this person, so I can't pepper her with questions and invade her privacy. So I turned to the internet to learn more. And I learned that in the US, there are over 100,000 people on the kidney transplant waiting list. And the wait could last between 5 to 10 years, and only 22,000 donations are performed in the US every year. And while 95% of US adults support organ donation, only 58% are signed up as donors. So one reason why so few kidneys are available is that there was this law that was passed in 1984 that said paying for organs is illegal. And the BBC recently looked at kidney donations and asked the question, should we pay kidney donors? So the people who say no believe that if we start paying people for kidney donations, individuals will flood the donation list wanting the financial incentives, but they won't fully understand what they're getting themselves into. Some of the long-term effects of kidney donation are nerve damage, pain, reduced kidney function, high blood pressure. And the National Kidney Foundation, they're a big influencer in the field. They oppose paying for kidneys because they say that any attempt to assign a monetary value to the human body risks devaluating the very human life we seek to save. Which I don't know that I agree with. But let's move on to the people who say, yes, we should pay for kidneys. So they combat these hesitations by saying that we can put in safeguards like built-in waiting periods to educate people about the effects. We can have delayed compensation, and payment doesn't have to be cash. It could take the form of tax credits, school vouchers, or other long-term government benefits. The other thing they say is that 500,000 Americans are on dialysis. So if you don't get a kidney and you're on the waiting period, the other option is to do kidney dialysis. And each patient costs $100,000 a year. And according to one estimate, if the US government offered $45,000 for every donated kidney, there would be a net gain of $46 billion. So, what do you think? Should we pay for kidney donors? I don't really see a downside to it, and I'm very curious if I'm missing something.
It makes me very, very... I'm sensitive to, I think, both sides of the argument. So I think the best way to put it is that makes me very, very nervous. And I think one way to... I read the article you're talking about, and I don't think it did the best job of explaining like what the possible downside is. And I think plainly it is that you're going to have a class of people who are selling organs and kind of doing damage to their body because they're in financial distress. Like imagine being a mother who can't pay her bills and is like, well, shit, I better sell a kidney. And we could talk about the protections and stuff like that in a second. But I think philosophically, the one conception is that we should pay people is that, you have two, like a party agreeing to a thing. There's a consensual exchange of services, if you will, or goods and services. But the other is, I was brushing up on Isaiah Berlin, and maybe he's not the best person to frame this, but he's a philosopher that came up with this idea of positive and negative liberty. And I think this is an interesting way to think about kidneys that kind of complicates the notion that you can just willingly sell your kidney and it's like end of the day, like why would you stop that? And he's talking specifically about smoking. And let me just get this out of the way. Gives this example: you're driving on a road, you take a right turn because there's nothing blocking you. It's sweet. You take a left turn, nothing blocking you. You get a fork, you go whatever way you want. And that is an absence of restrictions to your freedom, right? Nobody is choosing how or where you can go, right? And so that's like a predominant way we think about freedom. But then he says, what if you're at the fork and you take a left-hand turn because you have a tobacco craving and need to go pick up cigarettes? And what he argues is that there's this other kind of freedom that is more about our full sense of agency. And his argument is, for the addicted smoker, they're not truly in control of themselves. And now I'm not claiming people selling kidneys to be addicted to cigarettes or anything like that. But I think when you think about being in control of your actions, there are so many external factors. And one of them is just like financial duress, for instance. They're going to foreclose on your house. And so you're going to do things. And not just with selling kidneys, but like lots of decisions people make are done out of this and not necessarily their own. They wouldn't have made that decision otherwise. And so I think it always runs the danger of that. And I think with things like this, you get, and not just organ donation, there's a lot of things where it just seems like poor people are subsidizing the rich with, labor and body parts and stuff like that. And so that worries me. On the other end, donate your kidney, maybe get paid for it. There was also discussion of non-financial rewards that most people were cool with, and I'd be totally fine with, if you donate your kidney, we're going to send you to like the coolest resort in Tahiti. You're going to have a great time, 2 weeks off. That doesn't feel like some sort of like exploitation there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to retread the wonderful ground that Alec just treaded here so eloquently, but yeah, I would worry about like a Black Mirror type dystopian situation where the poor become the sites for the organ harvesting of the rich. And I think that if we lived in a society where people didn't have like crushing debts and financial needs, and they were able to make a decision on the basis of being okay, sure, I think that'd be great. What terrifies me about this idea is, yeah, people in desperate situations who might think like, do I foreclose on my house or donate my kidney or another organ? Do I default on student loan payments or do I do that? And that's really what would make me nervous about that. The other thing as well is whenever we mix profit into things like the ability to continue to healthily live, I get nervous. And you know, what example do we have of a regulated industry like this where things don't go relatively poorly? So there's that. On the flip side, I wonder if you could do like either the trip thing I like, but maybe there's a way you do like a tipping system where when you get into it, like a ride share thing. Like, you know, I give you a kidney, and I know that you might be able to tip. You might tip, you might not. Depends on how the kidney works. So maybe there's that where it's not required for that, or something like tax credits or tuition credits at a local university, something like that. And I guess the other thing, and I imagine, Serby, you know something about this. I mean, is it better to put effort into something like that right now, or to try to continue to accelerate research into, you know, cloned and stem cell based body parts so we can just make kidneys? So then we don't have to worry about people selling. Oh, that freaks you out?
Oh, well, just like the idea of growing organs has always like really, I don't know. It's like my mind refuses to accept it for some reason because it just feels so sci-fi. Mm-hmm. So when I first had this idea of doing this for this week, my first concern was about the inequality and will people from low SES backgrounds be exploited. And then I read about these safeguards, like non-cash options. And then I started to think like, oh, well, my concern was the same as the concerns that you brought. Like, are you going to just sell a kidney because you need to pay for food and stuff? And I didn't like that. But then I was like, well, what if you get tax credits? Or like Michael said, what if you get tuition reimbursement? Or what if somebody knocks off like loans? Or what if you get a trip or something like that? Like, if it's not cash, then does it change your perspective at all? Because it did change mine.
I think some of those sound better. So when you say tuition discounts or something, I think that brings up the same concern of I can't afford college and I need to go to college to have a life. And so I'm going to do that out of desperation. I don't, and possibly with tax credits, and, you know, even one of the arguments is deferred payment. Again, I think it falls into it, but I think when it comes into something purely like luxury, like a trip, or maybe like I don't know, a free iPhone or something like that. But to Michael's point about what if we just start growing kidneys, I think this happens in a lot of different areas. And I just remembered one, which is an egg donation. So a similar thing happens in that you can sell your eggs. And what happens is you get like a drug, hormones that, you know, make you produce a bunch and they harvest them, whatever. And oftentimes it's people out of financial desperation who need to sell them, and the consumers are like more wealthy people. And there's all sorts of problems and there's all sorts of ethics problems going on because the drugs that they're giving to people to make them produce more eggs have a lot of possible risk associated with them that they're not always forthcoming in disclosing to the people who are donating them, or the people didn't know about, was never explained, didn't understand, and all these varieties of things. So I think, you know, the kidney thing is just one specific example, but I think you could take any you know, sperm donation seems pretty harmless, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, I saw an episode of what's it called? The singing competition show, American Idol, where a contestant was the product of a sperm donation, and she met her sperm donation dad, and he had over like 27 kids, and all the sperm donation kids like met each other and got together. It was wild. I'm sorry that that's tangential, not really related to this. No, but yeah, I think the two things I think about here is, and I agree with everything that's being said, the motivation thing freaks me out because I am someone who, and this isn't really a bit, I walk around a city a lot. I almost get hit by cars sometimes. LA actually has one of the worst track records for pedestrian deaths because of cars. But sometimes I think if I get hit just a little bit, maybe shatter a tibia or something, I spend some time in the hospital, whatever, but I sue that person and pay off all my debt. And I truly sometimes think, like, would it be worth a few days of crushing pain, months of rehab and whatever, to live a debt-free life? And anything like this worries me because of those mixed motivations. The other thing I think about is, and this is maybe a more meta question, is what the limits are of the links we will go to continue to perpetuate a life that will definitely end no matter what. And this is a bigger question about kind of medical ethics and how we conceive of these things. But like, at which point do we do we ever get to a point where people are just like, if they have the means, are just like buying organs, getting blood boys to keep themselves going, all of this sort of stuff on this infinite quest to live forever? And at what point do we accept this this whole game we're playing? You know, the buzzer's going to go at some point for all of us. Let's enjoy it while we're here and not go too crazy trying to indefinitely perpetuate it. Sorry if that was a bummer.
This is an anecdote, but my partner is a researcher, goes to conferences about stem cells and things like that. And apparently always the weirdest people are the life extension people whose like whole goal is to figure out how we can make humans live forever.
Yeah,
But why? Like, I can't, if I had the option to live forever, I don't think I would take it. Because what if your loved ones don't do it and then you're alone? That would make me so sad. Or
I don't want to spoil anything, but like if one hasn't watched the final season of The Good Place, I think this is the sort of question they attempt to handle, and it's very interesting.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I was thinking of. Yeah. Like, if that was an option to you to live forever, would you want that? I don't think I would.
Alec, do you want to live forever?
No, but it'd be cool to live for a really long time and get to decide, all right, I'm 1,000 years old. Or maybe, like, I just want the choice to be like, all right, I'm 150, this is it. Or maybe I keep going until I'm 600 or 1,000 or 5,000, but not forever.
I would rather live pain-free. Like, to live a fulfilling life without any pain. Like,
I'd rather have a good 75 than a up and down painful 150.
Well, that's why I'm saying, like, give me the choice, right? Like, I if I'm imagining 150, I'd be like pretty spry for whatever reason. I don't know. But if I wasn't, I'd be like 100 and I'm done.
Wow. So feel free to let us know how long you want to live in the chat or via email.
And if you want to sell me your kidney.
Yeah. If you want to sell Serbia kidney, she's going to have a Venmo link, and she also accepts Bitcoin.
Yes.
Donate your organs, sign up on the registry, or if
Definitely.
you're uncomfortable giving the government your information, I will take your information and I will accept your organs.
Will you do the harvesting as well?
If they want, for an extra fee.
Rim. Serbia, any final thoughts on this before we move on?
No, thank you both.
Awesome. So now we're moving from a shallow people to great people donating organs to the anthropological study of geniuses. Alec, do you want to set up our interview with Jamie Loftus about her podcast, My Year in Mensa?
Yep. So My Year in Mensa is a podcast where Jamie Loftus, who is a comedian and writer, she successfully tested into the organization. She wrote about it, joined the largest sort of unofficial Facebook group of Mensa, and that was sort of a sociological experiment in and of itself. It was interesting to me because, at least online, the Mensa conversations weren't the sort of civil, high-minded conversations you might associate with people who claim to be very smart, but a lot of seething hatred, usually directed at Jamie because she wrote about them and kind of poked fun at them. She became the first or second most blocked member on that Facebook group. And then, being a reasonable person, said, I'm going to go to their annual conference and meet all these people who hate me in person. And I made this podcast about it, and it was really good. We'll post the unedited version on Wisecast. There's a lot of Jamie, long conversation about her shoplifting. It was great. Here it is, I think. We might have to wait a second. Hey, everyone. We're here with Jamie Loftus, who is a comedian. She has a great podcast called My Year in Mensa. We're here today to talk about Mensa because I listened to the podcast and read her article and thought it was so amazing that I just wanted to share it all with you. But specifically, the greatest headline that I've read, at least this week, Jamie, was you wrote it. It's called, quote, "Good news, they let dumb sluts into Mensa."
Yeah.
How did it feel?
That it felt pretty good. That headline like ruined my life for a little while, but I still think it's a pretty good headline. It was good. There was like, you do kind of get, even if you're like, oh, I think this is silly, there's still kind of that little ego validation that comes from it, that you're like, oh, I don't want this to I wish that I felt nothing, but I felt a little bit.
So did you feel drunk with power, or like an imposter, or both?
I did shoplift that day that I got it. I was like at a Forever 21, and then I just I did that thing that you do in high school. You're like, I'm just gonna leave wearing these pants.
Was it a full-on pair of pants?
What?
Was it a full-on pair of pants that were shoplifted when you were drunk with power for being a newly minted genius?
It was. I stole their I felt, first of all, I'm like, okay, stealing from big companies is allowed.
Yes.
Also, they were like $10 pants. They didn't lose even a good pair of
Yeah.
pants. So I was like, I think, because I was in the dressing room when I got the email.
Yeah.
And then I was like, I think I'm just gonna leave. And so I think that was my good drunk with power moment. That was exciting.
Just to step back a little bit, Mensa is an organization that you join to like affirm your smartness.
Yeah.
But you join not by taking an IQ. Is it similar to an IQ test that you have to take?
Yeah, so I took it on an assignment for a website I was writing for. I was just supposed to write about the experience of taking the test, because there is you can do it two ways. Of if you tested really high on IQ tests when you were younger, you can submit those, and then if it's above a certain number, you automatically get in. But you can also test in with a specific Mensa test that takes 2 hours, and you can only take it on Sundays at 8 a.m. in Pasadena. It's a whole thing. And so I took that test that it kind of, it felt very similar to most standardized tests that you would have growing up. It was pattern identification and just doing a lot of easy math really quickly. There was definitely one, I wish I remembered it better, but there was one that was kind of pop culture, or just how many cultural figures can you identify and what their profession was. But there was stuff like that too. So it was kind of it felt similar, not to the SATs or standardized tests you'd take as a teenager.
Well, here's a question. Do you consider yourself, have you historically considered yourself a smart person? Have you identified that way previously?
I think that I don't know. That's a very complicated question that I was trying to figure out in making this podcast. I was trying to do some research on what are these tests for, and if you do well on them, what does that even really mean about you? Because after getting in, it was very clear that it didn't mean you were a genius, just based on some of the behaviors that were displayed. I'm okay, so this doesn't mean that you're a genius, but what does it mean? And I think, I had always done well on standardized tests, but there's a lot of really brilliant people who don't do well on standardized tests and don't test well, and that's a discussion that's been going on forever as well. I don't know. I think that it just means that I test well. And yeah, I don't know. I did those gifted programs growing up that I think in retrospect were not very good for me and kind of stunted me socially in a lot of ways. And I think even in my hometown, because my mom teaches in the public school system that I grew up in, they're kind of doing away with those because it is like you can whatever be learning more advanced stuff when you're a kid, but if you're just completely sectioned off from other people, it's not healthy for you. And it like, I think best case, you're just maybe a little socially awkward when you are released into the general public. And at worst, you're just like being told you're better than other people your whole life. And that doesn't really service anybody. And so Mensa just felt like the most extreme example of that. Yeah. And then it's also like with that group, you have to be confident enough in yourself to pay people to tell you that I guess confidence maybe isn't even the word. But you have to be able to like throw down whatever, $60-$70 to be like, I will do well on this test. So it's a very like particular subset of a person that will take this test.
Yeah.
And I thought that was something really interesting you got at because, and we've sort of talked about this on the show before, but it's like bad to tell kids it's good to tell kids like, oh, you studied hard for this test and you did well and good for you, but it's like bad to be like, you're smart and you're smarter than everyone else. And so I think Mensa is maybe something I've always like as an adult kind of recoiled at because I'm like, who the fuck would join an organization to tell the rest of the world they're smart? And this is someone who joined the fucking debate team, which is functionally the same thing, except you have to compete with them. But the thing about debate, and just to defend it for a second, you join thinking you're the smartest person in the world, and then you get your ass kicked by like literally everyone. You're like, well, I'm dumb as shit. And really that was like a good moment for me. But so there's that one side, and I want to like joke and laugh at Mensa. But on the other side, and you really get at this, is like, you have a lot of like people who maybe don't connect with the rest of the world that well, and it's like a place for them to connect with other people like them, which is like I'm not going to call the group as a whole like wholesome, but like that's the wholesome thing about it. If you want to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I think that that was stuff that I was definitely not thinking about, and sort of I guess ended up forcing me to check myself a number of times throughout the process of like, yes, I was receiving a lot of harassment and it was like frustrating and I couldn't figure out how to make it stop or switch the conversation to something that was productive because it was online. So of course it wasn't going to be. But then like, I didn't grow up in a way that I felt isolated from, I always had someone to talk to. And so, yeah, I met like a number of people just through doing this project that didn't feel like they had people that they could talk to about things they were interested in. And that's like the good thing about online communities is you can find those people. And Mensa, I think, was kind of a shortcut for some people to do that. I also met people who had joined Mensa because they didn't have access to higher education. And it was a good thing to have on a job resume to be like, hey, I'm really smart, I'm really competent, even though I couldn't afford a college degree. Like, give me a chance. And that was also something that I never in a million years would have considered. And then there's people who just join because they want to feel better than other people. So there's kind of like a spectrum
The whole bag.
of reasons to join, some of which are very wholesome or practical or whatever it is that wasn't stuff I had considered. And so it was, it was good. I wish that it didn't, I wish people didn't maybe yell at me so much, but I ended up getting like a perspective on it that I wasn't expecting to.
I want to talk about so what happened is you wrote an article, joined the Firehouse is like the unmoderated Facebook group that like is the most active Facebook group.
Yeah.
And on one sense there was this idea that you had essentially as an outsider like made fun of us. How dare you? But essentially, like in the Facebook, you were being like dogpiled on, just like everyone was shitting on you, harassing you, calling you all sorts of like horrible names. There were even some things like they criticized you for that I think you were like, oops, like you outed a thread on the Facebook group called the boob thread, which you talk about.
Yeah.
We were like, I shouldn't make
cool.
fun of people who want to consensually share their boobs. Like that's cool. I shouldn't have outed that to the world.
Right.
So everyone's like harassed, but there's a constant refrain that you talk about in the podcast where some of the Mensa members are like, you just got to meet him in person. It's so much better. Like people are monsters on the internet, but they're actually nice in person.
Right.
How was that experience?
That was kind of unlike anything I'd ever experienced. I don't know. I still don't know where I fall on that because it was for the most part, I found it to be untrue, but true in some ways where some people were like, oh, we're really different in person, but that just meant that they would be too nervous to talk to me in person. So I'm like, well, that doesn't really feel like a big enough deviation from like, you know, like swinging your dick around on a private message board and then being too afraid to say anything to me in person. That's not as big a difference as you would think it is. But then there were other people that I don't know. I mean, it was just, there were some examples of people being too nice to me in person after saying really vile stuff to me online that felt like such a big like difference that it felt like performative. And
I found that interesting in the podcast. I think I know you used like fake names, but was it Katie?
Yeah. Yes.
I found that really surprising when you introduced this person in the story that is the podcast, who was pretty vile to you in an extreme way online, who then I think by night 2 was claiming that you were best friends.
My best friend. Yeah.
Yeah, I found that really shocking to hear that.
That I still am just like, what was going on there? I mean, and that portion of it felt kind of performative, but then we actually did end up having a discussion that felt, I mean, productive and frustrating and all those other things that was like, oh, this is the conversation I wanted to have the whole time. But it took, so, I mean, that conversation there's a 0% chance it was ever going to happen online in a way that made me check myself again too, where it's just weird when you're being dogpiled on like that, like the things about yourself that other people will take completely out of context and pass it off as the truth. Yeah. And you can almost track like, oh, I guess I can see why they might make that assumption on me based on this contextless. Like they were going into my Facebook account, which I haven't updated since college because I just haven't really, I just use it to keep in touch with my parents and keep.
It's for old people.
Yeah. So it's like the job that's listed for me is not my current job. And they would find that information and be like, why should we trust this girl? She works at like Brugger's Bagels. Like she doesn't know jack shit about any and stuff like that. And so you're like, oh, I guess, you know, I could have been working at Brugger's Bagels for the last 6 years. I haven't been, but that is like somehow a strike against me that is used in this group, or I don't know. And then there's just the people that are like, you suck dick to get work, which is just kind of, uncreative.
Yeah.
You were in so many situations that would have paralyzed people with fear or discomfort, and you're so resilient. How did you build that strength and that resiliency to process and overcome that situation?
That's very nice of you to say. I think that there were moments that that's kind of the tricky part of podcasts, where I don't think that in the moment I came off as like, wow, look at this resilient spirit. She's not, because I was like a wreck as it was happening. I think that some points I'm like naturally kind of shy in situations with like complete and total strangers. So I think in some moments I probably came off to them as very nervous and sometimes a little bit scared, depending on what the situation was. But I don't know. I mean, I think that I have like past experience in just like dumb comedy stuff I've done where it's like the point is to put yourself in a place of discomfort. And if I'm able to like keep that in mind and be like, okay, this feels like garbage, but if it didn't feel like garbage, I would be doing it wrong, or something like
real
keeping
commitment to the joke.
Right. Yeah. Just like staying locked in that mindset. Like if this felt good, then I'm not doing something right. Like it was, I went into it knowing it was going to be very uncomfortable. I didn't realize how uncomfortable. And then I think, it was just the only thing I was concerned about was like physical safety, which fortunately ended up being okay. I don't know. I tried.
Has this experience impacted the way you share things online or your interactions with strangers?
I mean, I guess it kind of makes me think twice of how I present myself. It makes me think a little harder about when you do get a pile on. I think it is, I don't know. I mean, I have like differing opinions from like my own peers about how to best handle this. Of like, a lot of people are like, well, if someone talks shit to you, life is too short, block them. There's no space for that. And I understand that, but that's just not the way that I choose to approach it. And I think that like most people are within two interactions of forming some sort of empathy, because mostly it's like if people are giving you shit for a reason that isn't you've done something horrible, it's that they're lashing out, and like if you respond, they will first of all be completely shocked, and I don't know, I've had, but I also have like a history of like responding to mean comments and then ending up like forging strange friendships through that. So I'm probably it's probably not healthy, but it makes me feel better than just blocking someone.
It's a brave strategy.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it'll kill me someday, but
well, we hope not, for the record.
Right? Hopefully, no one's watching this video a year from now, being like, "Wow, she knew."
Oh no! Please no.
I think that's about all the time we have. Jamie, thank you so much. Where can people find you on the internet? Where can they find your podcast?
What's your address? Where can they find you?
Yeah, where can you
out
find
for
me?
lunch?
That's the scariest thing about being a comedian, is you're just constantly advertising where you'll be and at what time. It doesn't feel safe. You can find me online on Twitter at Jamie Loftus Help, and on Instagram at Jamie Christ Superstar. And then the name of the podcast is My Year in Mensa, and you can find it pretty much anywhere you listen to podcasts.
Awesome.
It's over there. Yeah.
Yeah. Subscribe, 5-star reviews, nice comments, all the stuff. It's really great, and we very much recommend that everyone check it out.
Thank you.
A parting question: are you going to put Mensa on your resume from now on?
No, never. I wash my hands of it, but I will not be as judgy to anyone else that does now. So
that's nice.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. This is so much fun.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jamie.
Yeah.
Wow, and that was
back.
Our interview with the wonderful Jamie Loftus.
Yeah, and I just want to, in the chat earlier before the segment, people were establishing who had the better beard. I'm sorry that you lost, Michael.
I don't want to be a part of the competition. Mine isn't good right now. It's kind of, I'm in a weird state, so you definitely
It's classy.
win.
It's not a it's a classy beard. Anyway.
And let me just say, for anyone that enjoyed hearing Jamie talk about that, very accomplished, very funny, and very weird in a good way, a comedian. So if anyone enjoyed that, Google her, look her up. She tours a lot. She has a really great one-person show called Boss Whom Is a Girl. She's been running recently, so check her out if you can.
She has a great video on the internet she did with Super Deluxe where she gets leech therapy and leeches are put all over her, and it's horrifying but kind of funny.
Yes, and actually, just to spoil it, we're going to be doing that for Serby. She's going to get leeches on her face during the next podcast, and we'll see how it goes. So come back in. But I think
become a patron. It's only available to patrons.
Yeah, for patrons only, you'll get to watch Serby do leech therapy. That's a part of her brand, #LeechLife. So that's all we have. This has been a great show. I think we can say that. We've offered
We got mailbag, though.
Oh, we do? I thought we didn't.
We do.
But
I will also say, if you want to send us mail, electronic mail, culturebinge at wisecrack.co. We check it. We might read your thing. But also, if you want to call us, the number is... Oh, God.
I thought you were going to say it. Yeah, 213-534-8807. If you want to call us, leave a voicemail. We'd love to hear your voice. 213-534-8807. Please give us a call.
All right, just a couple quick emails today. We don't have any voicemails to play for you. First one is from Arthur. Says, "Hey, Wisecrack, love the podcast. Hope everyone's orifices are okay. I appreciate the concern. The loneliness topic I related to a lot and had opinions about as well. You guys talked about socializing more, but I think sometimes it can depend on a person. Over the last few years, I haven't been in the best state of mind, and by the end of last year, I deleted almost all my contacts, which ended up being a pretty good decision because I'm feeling really better now. To Serby's point about private matters, I now only have 2 friends, both of whom are older than me, and tell them about my private matters, and that's working well. When I was at my worst last year, I started watching JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, and I've become so invested that I started reading the manga and joined the fandom too. So the actions of watching and reading helped me feel less lonely, and joining the fandom made me feel connected to other people. As always, love all the stuff y'all do, and I'm waiting for the next episode."
Nice.
That's a great reminder that not everybody needs to socialize in the same way, and that there are different outlets to not feel so lonely. So thank you for reminding us about that.
Yeah.
Definitely.
The next email from Lucas. Hi, guys. You know the drill. Long-time listener, first-time writer. Welcome. I'm writing in about the loneliness segment. Recently, I had a friend come visit me in the UK from abroad to study. Being in the sixth form, that is late high school, I guess the English equivalent. I'm studying hard for finals and haven't been able to hang out with her much for the month she's been here. Not having many other friends here, she began to get lonely, so I recommended she try Reddit. There are subs for other cities and countries, but I've used and recommended our London Social Club. It's a sub where people post meetups in the city or ideas for things they'd like to do, but don't have people to go with. Contrary to popular belief, the meetups are actually full of people of all ages and surprisingly few neckbeards, so it's been great for me and worked, but great for her, so I definitely recommend it. Thanks and love everything you guys do. There's one of these for New York City. I subscribe to it, but I've never ever gone to a thing, and I should do that.
That's good to hear. I think I've been hesitant about stuff like that because I assume it's going to be a trap and I'm going to get murdered. So it's good to hear that it's just like cool, like-minded people of all ages.
Well,
That's a
you
great
might be able to
suggestion.
get trapped and murdered, but
Well, I was just getting over that. Any more emails?
no, that's it. That's all we have for today.
Awesome.
Again, if you want to write us, culturebinge@wisecrack.co. We'd love to hear from you.
Awesome.
Yes, please send us emails.
Well, great. So that's all we have. So, Serby, we'll start with you. Where can our listeners/viewers find you if they need more Serby content in their lives?
Suri Patel 22 on Twitter, and I will create an Instagram so that I can be an influencer.
Oh, yes. So get those hashtags ready. Please send them in for next week. Alec, where can the hungry people find you?
On Twitter at wisecrackalec. That's ALEC. It's not Alex. Don't try typing that.
His name is not Alex. Great. I am Michael O. Burns on Twitter. And I'm just going to do a quick plug. If you haven't checked it out yet, we have a new show called The Good, The Bad, and The Brilliant. We've had some great people on it. Alex been on it. Helen's been on it. Tommy's been on it. Jared is on an upcoming episode. And we also recently filmed one with Sam Brown of the sketch group Whitest Kids You Know. So if you haven't had a chance to check out Good, Bad, The Brilliant yet, please check it out and let us know what you'd like to see. But that's all for Culture Binge. We'll be back in 2 weeks. Remember, 2 weeks, and we will see you then.